Okay, so welcome everybody to class. My name's Amber, Amber Bell, and we're working today. Marlene is on the call as well from Dexpro Dynamics. What we're going to be doing is we are going to be sharing some tips and tricks on how to work smarter, not harder with SmartList for Dynamics GP. There's a lot of tips to cover, so I'll go ahead and get started. Quick little intro. I've been working with GP for over 20 years now. I always like to joke that I started back in kindergarten because it's crazy to think it's been that long. But I've enjoyed working with the product for a lot of years. I've worked with customers all over the country, which has been a privilege. I work a lot with the GPUG community or the GP user group community, and I'm all over online. You can find me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and everything like that. So if you want more information, that's always what I tell people to do. Okay, so before we get started into all of the SmartList tips, I wanted to share some housekeeping tips. What I mean by housekeeping tips are some navigation and training tips like that I like to share with clients. So one of the first things is these tips do come from my workbook. I know we're giving a workbook away today, and I want to make sure and show you guys some tips from that. Let's go ahead and do that. And Marlena, for whatever reason, I'm getting all the pop-ups for admitting from the waiting room. So just so you know that I'm getting that. I don't know why this is being funky. If I can move this over. Okay, so close all windows. I'm going to go ahead and show you a couple of things. So the first thing is I like to make a toolbar that's easier for you to see SmartList. So what I like to do is put my mouse over that toolbar, and we're going to make sure the standard toolbar is checked. We're going to right click and customize and then change that standard toolbar. The reason I like to do that is that sometimes you'll find that people are clicking 3 clicks to get to something that really could be right there on the toolbar. And so we're going to go ahead and do that. Okay. And Marlena, or whoever's doing the host, let me know if I need to keep hitting the accept. I just want to make sure I'm letting people in if they need to. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and set that toolbar up. Just so you know, today's session, again, is getting recorded, so you guys will be able to pause and see the things that I'm doing if that helps you later. We're going to right click right on the top, and I already added that standard toolbar. I added a custom one as well. I'll take that away. And we're going to go down to customize. Now inside that standard toolbar, it usually automatically has the SmartList. It may have tasks and reminders and things like that. I take those away. But what I do is I click that and I hit modify selection, image, and text. So you'll see me do that on a lot of them, modify selection, image, and text, modify selection, image, and text. I do that with clients over and over again so they get used to making that change. I add a couple other windows. One of them shows what's running on the system. If you've ever had it look like SmartList is broken, it could be that you were posting and you hadn't closed all the posting journals. So a process monitor will show you what's running on your system and what might be making it look like things are stuck. So using that process monitor is a good idea. And then close all windows. Now with close all windows, I went in and I did image and text, modify selection, image and text. I added it by clicking add, and that happens to be in the main commands or categories, and it's just right here where I've got close all windows. I have a third-party program that brings in an extra option, so if you don't see those, don't worry about that. Then I went in here and I actually changed the image. You can pick a different button if you want as well. So we want that so we can get right into SmartList. So that's tip number 1. Number 2 is if there are SmartLists that you use all the time, don't waste your time going in and going SmartList, sales, customers, customer balance, like spending all this time looking for that. You can add a SmartList on the side toolbar. So what I can do with that is I can go into GP. You see I have a lot of shortcuts, but I can right click right here and say add and add SmartList. In here, I find a SmartList. So I just mentioned customer balance. So let's go into customers, and I'm going to go into customer balance. Now, what I like to do is I like to say that it's a SmartList. So I might even make the name say SmartList and then go like this and say add. And then we'll say done. So you see now I have a SmartList customer balance. So instead of 3 clicks, 4 clicks, 5 clicks trying to find that, I've got it right there, and I'm able to open and see that SmartList. My goal is, again, to cut back on clicks. By the end of the year, you'll have an extra 15 minutes, but actually it adds up to quite a bit over time. The next thing that we're going to do is there another way that we can get to those SmartLists? And the last way I think I have is that we can actually add that into a tool that I see a lot of people not taking advantage of, and it's something called My Reports. My reports, we can add reports to that from things like the age trial balance, or we can add things from, any of the other reports that you see inside of GP. But we can also do that with SmartList. We can do that with live Excel reports or even SQL reports. We can have a link to open those. The way that we're going to do that is we're going to go into GP. And let's pick, we did a sales, let's do a purchasing. And we're going to go ahead and click on the sidebar here and say Excel reports. Now, if you don't know this, we can do another session, and you guys could let us know in your comments or when you email. We're going to give you Marlena's contact info. Let us know if you've not set up Excel reports, if that's something that you'd like some training on. We're working on our agendas and our training schedule for the next few months. So we were planning to do a full training day, SmartList Builder, but we can also plan training for Excel reports. We can plan some tips and tricks for those if that you're interested. What I wanted to show you is that I can come into here, I can find any of these different reports, and a lot of these are free right out of the box from Microsoft. And I'm going to go in here, and we did customer balance. Let's go ahead and do vendor balance. And I can say add to right here. And in here, I'm going to go ahead, and the TWO stands for the company that I'm in. That's the abbreviation for the old company name. But I'm just going to say Excel report vendor balance. Now I went ahead and I did that with Excel reports. I could do that with SmartList as well. I just wanted to show you that there's options for both. And if we go back to home, you'll see that in the My Reports section. So I've got a lot that I've done over time, but you'll see here I've got Smart Lists and GP reports. All of these can be added into the My Reports section. So you do that just by going into the module that you're going to work with, and you can find that Smart List, that Excel report, or that GP report. If you want to see all reports that are available, you can go under Administration, and they'll have all reports list. Years ago, I had a client that said, can you give me a list of all the available reports? This was before we had the navigation list, and I said, you don't want to spend the money for me to write down all the reports. It's going to take hours. Microsoft does a good job of giving us lots of reports out of the box. Okay. Next thing that we want to make sure you know how to do is some people don't realize that they can set user preferences and SmartList options. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to go into, make sure I had my ringer off. It's going to be under Administration, Setup, System, and System Preferences. Now, starting in GP 2015 R2, they had the option for you to set a SmartList visibility. What that means is that when you're going into SmartList, you're going to see in my SmartList, mine's a mess. I do a lot of training, I do a lot of events, so I do all kinds of demos, more than I need to. You'll see in mine that a lot of them are duplicates. Even in the builder, I have the same thing 15 times because I've demoed it. But inside of each list, underneath, what are called SmartList favorites. So those are the saved searches. When you go into this, I've gone to clients and they'll have hundreds. And sometimes they're literally a search someone did 5 years ago for a specific transaction that they needed to find. So what we might want to do is make the default be that when they save them, that they save the favorite to the user ID. You'll see mine defaults here to the user ID. What that will do is it'll only be visible to that user in all the companies they have access to. It secures it so that everyone can't see it. If you want, when you're setting it up, if your system is set, if it's set to system, but you know it's only one you care about, you can go ahead and set that to your user ID. If it's a search that only applies to the company you're logged into, make it visible to company. There's another called user class that's not used that often, but that is another option where we can put a class ID on your user setup, and you can have groups that way. Not used that often, but it is very handy if there's specific reports that work that way. And if you want to go ahead, I hear some people, if you want to hit mute on your phone, that would be great, so we don't have any background noise. That'd be great. If you do have questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. I'm watching for those. I do have one chat. Let's just see. Okay, perfect. And we're going to go ahead and keep going. Okay, SmartList options. Now, the other thing that I have heard as an issue is that people will say, it always maxes at 1,000. Why does it always max at 1,000? The reason it maxes at 1,000, that's the default from GP, but you can adjust that. If you go to Administration, Setup, System, SmartList Options. I'll show you that window here. Administration, Setup, System, SmartList Options right here. And you'll see I already bumped up my accounts to 5,000, but let's say I look at my payables transactions. You'll see how it's maxing at 1,000. I can bump that up. Now, I could also make changes, and I can say that the columns, I might want to adjust the columns that show. Know that if you do change that, it changes for all users in all companies. It is a system change. This change as well for maximum records is all users, all companies. We can also put a password that would, in that bottom section with the password, affects all smart lists in all companies. It prevents those from being edited or changed without a password. That's an option as well. Okay. Now, one of the things that I've found is, and it even happens for me, as many years as I've done this, you're trying to find a column, but the name of the column differs from what you think it should be. So one of the easiest things to do is to change and sort the columns by the column type. So for example, I'm going to go ahead, and the sample that I have is a customer list. So we're going to go into GP, and I'm going to go into my sales. And you can see again, I have security to everything. You may have a restricted list. That's a security setting. So I'm going to go into customers, and there's a built-in list called past due customers. That's a built-in list everyone should have. Now, I might want to clean this list up. So we're going to clean this up and make it look better. I don't use these extra aging periods. I couldn't care less about the address, but I want to know the last time that they paid and the last amount they paid. So we're going to go ahead in here, and I'm going to call this Amber's this is my past due customer list. I'm going to add it as a favorite for now. We're going to take the columns. I don't care about this. I don't care about this. I don't care about this. You can remove the columns. One of the things that you also can do is that people don't realize that they can rename the names, the columns. I've had clients that go, oh, you can rename them? Yes, you can rename them here if you want. And when you save it, it'll save that name. So if you're constantly exporting and renaming the columns, you can fix them there. So I'm going to hit add here, and I'm going to sort it by type. What I'm looking for here is the date columns. So I want to look for, well, I actually want to know the last aged. If anybody works in AR, you might know that the AR doesn't age automatically. And I want to know the last payment date. I held down Control and selected those two columns. I've made changes to this list. If I close right now, it won't remember them. So what I need to do is hit favorites and modify. And I'm going to have a slide that comes up that reminds you to do that in just a second. Now I set a system-wide password of 123. That's why I had to put a password in. So you can set passwords. So now I can see my last aged. I can see my last payment. I'm in the test company. That's why the date's funky in the future. What I also want to do is add another column, and I want the last payment date. I'm going to resort it by field name, click anywhere, and hit the letter L. And there's the last payment amount. That's what I wanted to see. And see that. So I've got a nice list here. We're going to go ahead and say favorites and hit modify. Again, I have to put that password in. So it's really easy to find those columns if you sort it by the type of column. I do that a lot for things that are drop downs or yes, no's, voided, yes, no, on hold. Those are going to be in the yes, no section. You'll see that. So definitely try sorting it by the type. You'll find your columns much, much quicker, especially if it's things like dates. Those are all very easy to see. I like to see if I have a new customer or a new vendor or a new GL account, then I'll do that by created date. So if I show you that, we're going to do reminders in a minute, and I'll show you how that comes into play. I mentioned I have this as a reminder, and the reason I do this is I have seen this for myself time and again. When you're running SmartList, it tries to refresh a lot in the background. So sometimes you'll have added 5 different columns and gotten it perfect, had a search, and you haven't hit the save or the favorites and add or favorites and modify in a long time. And you'll drop those columns that you took all that time to find. So literally what you guys just saw me do is what I do all the time. I will find the columns. Before I even do anything crazy to it, I will save it as a favorite. I'll add a column, I'll save it, I'll go favorites, modify. I adjust the column width, favorites and modify. You do that over and over because, again, it tries to refresh in the background. You might lose some of those columns or things that you've added. One quick tip I forgot to mention, and this isn't in the slides, but I just thought I would tell you, is you'll notice how some of mine, the name is cutting off. If you right click and say increase width, that will make that wider. You can't drag that column wider. Some people will try and try and try, and then they get frustrated because out of the box, it's a very narrow list. So right click and hit increase width or decrease width. That's a quick little extra tip. Okay. So we talked about, I just mentioned this before, there's no save. I've had people who literally, I had a client I went to, they created, anytime they wanted to do a new search, they would go into SmartList Designer or Builder and they would create a brand new report because no one ever told them that they could literally just hit favorites and add and favorites and modify to change or save a SmartList. 9 times, well, not 9 times, that's a huge number. We'll say several times out of that. I don't want to guess the number, but when you're trying to do a SmartList search, the goal is to first start and see if it's available using a standard SmartList. So try that first. There's a lot of functionality built into those that you don't have to worry about. If you run into a wall and you can't get the list you want, or you run out of searches, filters, or you want to do, this, and this with it, that's when Designer comes in, or Builder. We're going to be doing these webinars showing you kind of the difference between Builder and Designer. I'll be honest, I think if you get into more complicated reporting, Builder is going to blow Designer out of the water, and it's fine because Builder is getting functionality added to it all the time. It's a third-party product, but the folks that have designed it used to work with the product at Microsoft, so they know the guts of GP really well. So definitely keep your eye out for those in your inbox. We're going to send invitations to sessions and events regarding those. So we already hit favorites, and we can hit favorites and modify. If you hit new or modify over here, that's going to launch SmartList Designer or SmartList Builder. And we don't want to do that for just a regular. The one I just did had nothing to do with Designer or Builder. So I just hit favorites and add, favorites and modify. Okay. This is the window that we went into, and you can see that right there. Okay. If you set the visible to just the user ID, one quick tip that a lot of people don't realize is that will automatically add it to your My Reports. That can be good, or that can get, if you get too many in your My Reports, you can always clean it up. I have 10,000 things in my Reports right now. You'll see that in here. So every so often, like I said, I do so many training sessions with clients and events. Every so often, I literally have to sit here and pull up my Reports list just to be able to demo better. And I will come in and I will check the box and hit remove. You cannot mark all and hit remove. If you try, the remove is grayed out. You have to go one at a time, check the box and hit remove. If you end up with too many things in your My Reports. There's not a limit in GP, by the way. It's just if you want to clean it up, that's what you do. Okay. If you're making your SmartList visible to other people, add your name or your initials to the name of the favorite. I'm doing this in a test company. I always forget to do this, but I just had a client a couple years ago who somebody's job was literally to clean up all their SmartList favorites because they had so many that it was very difficult for them to manage. There's no limit in GP, but they were finding that there was one set to when vendor is equal to ABC Incorporated and date is equal to 2004, June 2004 to July 2004. And there was these old favorites, but they didn't know was someone using it and not saving the changes. It took them a long time to clean it up. It's not something you have to do, but they were just getting so frustrated with the lists being overwhelming. If you're making it visible to other people, you can set your own password. You notice that mine are using that default password, but I can come in and I can set my own password. I can say, we'll just put Dex Pro in here. I probably won't remember what I put in there, but we'll go ahead and hit modify. Okay. So now I've got a new favorite password. So you can do that on each of those. That comes into the newer versions, but we hope you're in a version that includes that. If you don't, we'll talk about options for upgrading later today. One of my favorite features is creating a SmartList reminder. I'm going to do one, and the sample here, I'm doing one where customers are missing a salesperson. You can do it for new accounts. You can do it for new customers, new vendors. Amount is over a certain amount. Unposted transactions. You can do it for all kinds of things. I'll do it a lot for unposted journal entries. I'll do it a lot for new accounts in the general ledger. For payables, I might want to know if an invoice is over $5,000. You can do things like that. So how we do that, we're going to do it for new accounts, just because I may have a few on this test company. Now, just so you know, again, this is crazy dates. It's going to be 2027, but we'll be able to add a column very quickly, and we'll be able to filter. So we've got my accounts. You'll see I have a whole bunch of different samples underneath here. But we're going to go to columns. And we did the tip earlier. We added and we did it by type. Remember how we did that earlier? See how easy it is to put created date in there? You'll see a bunch of these just came in when I created the system. And you'll see there's some that are in the newer year. So what I want to do is I want to say any that are greater than January 1st, 2020. Let's just put that. Favorites. And we're going to say new GL accounts. Now you'll notice mine is defaulting to user ID. If I want everyone to see it, I can change it to system. And I can come into here and put my initials. We're going to make this a reminder. Now I haven't finished yet. I just added that column. It's not ready yet. But I can start the favorite, start the reminder, and then fix the reminder so it's correct. I'm going to say it's the number of records is greater than 0 and click OK. And then I'm going to go in here and hit search. And I'm going to say created date is greater than. Now I could say beginning of the calendar year if I want to just see ones that are from the beginning of the calendar year. And we'll see. Now we can see because this is 2027, that's why that's being funky. So we're going to switch it to greater than, and we're going to enter a date and just say 01. Mine is again a little bit funky because I'm in the test company. So we're going to go ahead and say okay. Now we've got the accounts that were added. We're going to hit favorites and hit modify. I have to put in the password that's in the system. If I want to not use that anymore, I could have that changed at the system level. It's not a bad idea to put that system level password though. So now you're going to see here on my home page, if I hit refresh, I should see new GL accounts when it comes up. There we go. New GL accounts 246. So you can use this home page reminders as a way to monitor for new accounts, monitor for unposted. I had a customer who added 1,000 million different reminders, and they were changing companies all the time. It does slow it down. After a while, you'll notice a little bit of slowdown in company change. So, you know, be sparing on the ones you actually need. If you end up with ones you don't need, you can always hit new reminder here, and you can remove them. So if there's things in here you don't really need, you can hit remove and clean those up. Okay, going to keep going. You can add those to your home page. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about searches. I mentioned this before, so I didn't mention this before. In the searches, one of the things I had a customer not realize is that in the search window, you can actually search on columns that you don't see. So sometimes I'll have a list of open AP transactions, and I don't want to see that column that says whether or not it's voided, but I want to include the filter of whether or not it's voided. So in the search, when you go to the lookup for the column, you can change that to all columns. Again, I'm telling you these tips because they're ones that clients have told me over the years they didn't realize. Okay. You can also set the maximum records in that window, and that will apply to just that SmartList. So maybe you don't have security to the SmartList options for the system. Maybe you don't want to change the setup for the maximum for all reports. You just want to change it here. You can do that here in the search options. Okay. So the order by is the key to top 10 list. I'm going to show you guys a quick top 10 list, and then we'll keep going. I know we've got some other stuff we need to cover later. So I'm going to go back into my SmartList. And I want to look at my top 10 customers with the current balance. We want to know who we need to do some collections calls on or who we need to talk to. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to use customer balance to start with because that one has the column that I like. But what we want to do is we're going to come in here. Here's what I used to think you could do is that you could sort it, and then you've got it sorted, and I'm going to go into my search, and I'm going to say 10. And I thought, oh, okay, this should show me the top 10. And I'm going to say top 10 customers. Okay, so I've got my 10, but they're all letter A. Even though I had pre-sorted it by the balance, in the background when it's doing the search, it looks at the default search for that list, and the default search is by customer number. So what I want to do is go back into my search and click order by and pick the column for customer balance, hit insert, and change it to descending. Now I'm going to click OK. And now you can see my customers are all over the place in the names, but they have the actual correct top 10. So that's a quick, easy, you can do a top 100, top 10, things like that you can do in that list. So that order by is the key for that to work. Okay. So you can see in here, the other thing in the search is you'll notice there's a built-in list called past due customers. That's actually using a filter type of match one or more, 31 to 60 or 61 to 90 or 91 and over are each greater than 0. If you set it to match all, the only customers would come up is if any customer happened to have a balance in each of those aging buckets. And that's very rare. So what you want to do is match one or more. You're going to run into occasions where you want to have a mixture of this plus this plus this, and you want to have only customers that are in Illinois. If you get into those kind of filters, that's where SmartList Builder will make it a lot easier. So we can show you that in another training class. So this is where I mentioned in here where you want to be careful, because if I went into here and I said I want to know all my payments and all my credits and all that have a current transaction not equal to 0. If I do one or more, I'm literally going to see all invoices, all payments. It's going to find all transactions that are not equal to 0. So it kind of mixes it up, and it's going to get all kinds of weird. It's going to show you all the payments, even if they don't have 0. All the credit memos, it gets to be a mess. So if you're getting into that, I only want these, but I want them of these 3 types, that's where Builder is going to be a lot easier to use. Okay. You can also do what's called a field comparison. One of the out-of-the-box, easy ones to use this as a sample is customers that are over their credit limit. Another one I like to demo that's very easy to demo is we can compare names in vendors. So if I go into purchasing and I go into vendors, you'll notice that I start a lot of time on the vendor balance and the customer balance. That's only because it only has a couple columns. It's a lot easier to clean up. I don't care about the balance, but I want to look at the vendor check name. I want to see if any have the check name and the name not equal to each other. There are scenarios where that would be correct. Maybe they're DBA or something like that, but sometimes it's a mistake. So we want to say is not equal to the vendor name. Oh, well, let's check and see why these are in there. That looks really weird. What's that one that's USAM? And this one, oh, the name has an extra M, but they fixed the check name and forgot to fix the typo there. Let's go into here. What's going on with this? Somebody put the class ID accidentally into the check name. This is actually out of the box from Microsoft. So when they were creating this, they made a mistake in the test data. So weird stuff can happen. It's very easy to fix. You can just copy, paste it, fix it. I leave it because I show that in demos all the time because it's an easy one to catch. One of the last things I'm going to show you today before we talk about some other things coming up on our in our schedule for you is one of my favorites, and literally I've done this at events. Every time I do it at events, people love this. It's one of my favorite tips, and it's old. It's been in GP for years and years and years and years. Now in the slide, you'll see that I have a how-to on how to do this. If it's something that you're interested in us including in a future blog post, we can do that. We can give you some printouts, things to help you with this. Just let us know if that would help you. In Excel, we're going to go ahead and pull up my Excel. And I'm going to go ahead and close. I was doing a demo the other day with something else. Pull up Excel again. You want to make sure that you have the developer ribbon turned on. So in Excel, you want to hit Options, and you want to go to Customize Ribbon and make sure that the developer button right here is turned on. That's important. Okay. Now over in GP, we're going to take a SmartList. So let's take a SmartList, and I'm going to take SmartList, and I'm going to do customers, and I'm going to do a special one. So we're going to take our past due customers. I like this one because I like the columns it has. And actually, let's look at Amber's because I already took away the columns I didn't care about. I'm going to add in a column, and we're going to go salesperson. And I want that to be the top column. But moving it up and down on the sides, I can do that. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and say favorites, and we're going to go so we're going to go ahead and add this as a favorite. I don't care if they're past due. I want to know all of them, whether they're past due or not, and I want to know the total due. So I'm just going to go into columns, and I'm going to add customer balance. And I'm just going to move that up a little bit and call it total due. And click OK. And then I'm going to remember what I have to do every time, favorites and modify. And I'm going to go in here and do a search. In this case, remember I'm doing that one or more. I'm going to match all, and I'm just going to take away all of these. And I only want to know any customers where the current balance is not, or the current total due, sorry, that's what I want. Total due is not equal to 0. And I'm going to click OK. And again, I have to favorites and modify. And I have to put in the password. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is send this out to Excel. Now when I send this out to Excel, it doesn't look very good, right? And you guys have seen that happen, I'm sure. And I'm going to take out the columns for the dates, I think. Yeah, because it's going to be a little wide. I'll make it look a little better. Columns. We can leave all those extra ones in there, but just for today, I want to make it a little bit narrower. Remember, I have to hit favorites and modify. Sometimes I forget when I do a quick change, so just remember next time you come in to do that. Go ahead and send it out to Excel. Now what we're going to do is we're going to record a macro, and a macro is just a series of clicks in GP or a series of clicks out in Excel. This happens to be an Excel macro. So I'm going to go into developer, and we're going to record macro. I always call my first one format just because that's what I called it years ago. And I always remember my first one's usually formatting. And I stored the macro in this workbook. I used to try putting it into a personal workbook or a new, it never really worked very well. So we're going to hit format. Now what I want to do is do my formatting. So first thing I'm going to do is size these a little better. Then I'm going to come into here and I'm going to make this home. And I want this to be, my favorite color is green. So we'll pick a nice green and make it bold. And I should have sized after, so I can size again, doesn't matter. These ones are a little bit hokey looking, so we're going to make these look better. That looks nicer. We're going to go into, insert and data. That's what I wanted to do, data. And here we're going to go to subtotal, and we're going to say at each change in salesperson, we're going to sum all the columns. And then we're going to also do a page break. Okay. So now we've got that. We're going to go ahead and go to the page layout, and we're going to change it to landscape. And then we're going to come into here, and we're going to go ahead and say print titles and rows to repeat at top. We're going to do this. And we're going to go ahead and print the grid lines. And we can get it fancy and put a header and footer. I like to say on the bottom page. So you can get into, things like that. In the header, you could say customer balance or customer. Go ahead and click OK. Now I could get fancier and fancier, but we're just going to go ahead and click OK. At this point, we're done, and we're going to hit favorites and stop, or developer stop recording. I always do a second macro that clears the data. So I'm going to hit record macro, and the second one just clears data. This is not required, but again, these are things that I do years ago, and it always works, so I've gotten in the habit of just doing it the same way. I click right between the A and the 1 and hit delete, and then I hit stop recording. Now I need to save it. We're going to do a save, and oh, you know what? We're going to go here and say save as, and we'll just browse. I'm going to put it on my desktop because I'll find it easier. Now, one of the things you'll notice is that I'm going to go to my desktop, and then I'm going to switch this to be a macro enabled template. But notice that it changed the navigation. It went to the macro folder. So what I want to do is go back and put it back on wherever I'm going to put it, which is my desktop. And we're going to call this salesperson report. And I'm going to say save. Now what I do is I go back into GP and I go to SmartList, Export Solutions. I'm going to call this salesperson report. And I'm going to go in here and find that document we just did. Now again, I put it on my desktop. Let's find it here. And I put in the 2 macros that I just did. So I actually do clear first and then format. What that's doing is saying if anything happens to be on that workbook, which again, it won't be, but if it happens to be there, it'll clear it first before it tries to export again. And we're going to go customers, and we want all customers aging with salesperson, and click save. Now I don't see any change yet, but what I need to do is I need to click off of that smart list and then go back in, and now my Excel will have a little drop down. Now I always say that during demos, it always seems to break when you're doing a demo, but this should work. It's a pretty easy one. So we'll go ahead and hit that. And please work, please work, please work, every time. I always say when I'm doing demos, it's like you're watching a cooking show, they have the cake ready to go. When you do a live demo, it's always a little nerve-wracking, but it worked well. So now we've got a nice report, and if we take a look at the print preview, it is a really cool report. Per customer, we have, or per salesperson, we have their total balances. And how long would that take me to do? No time at all. Next month I want to run it, hit the button, it's exported. I can pass those out, put it in a, put it in their, in their check or something if they want a copy of it. Okay. So that's an export solution. Now again, in the slides, we went into options, turned on developer. We recorded a macro under developer, and I always call the first one format and the second one clear. You can call them anything you want, but since I'm always formatting first and I want to clear just to make sure there's nothing left in the table or in the worksheet, I always save that as a macro as well. Make sure you save it as a macro enabled template. It's going to try to move it to your template folder. I always change it to a GP shared folder. The reason you want to do a GP shared folder is that other people can then use that export solution. Inside of GP, you're going to go into SmartList and Export Solutions. Then we're going to add that, and you can apply it to more than one SmartList. So that's a great way to do that. And then it comes up, and then it comes out like that. Okay. Before I pass this over and let you meet Marlena from DexPro, if you haven't had a chance to meet her or talk to her, I want to tell you about some upcoming events. I do want to do a webinar. I actually snuck this in after I talked to Marlena about what we're covering. Is I want to show you guys differences between builder and designer. We're also planning some full training classes. We'll get you guys information about how to sign up for those soon. We're going to be working with other GP all-stars and people like Belinda Allen in the next few months as well. And we also offer through DexPro business process and system reviews. So Marlena can tell you more about why that's something you should definitely take advantage of. We've worked with a lot of customers. I've been working with the DexPro team for a couple of years now. On projects, and I really respect Marlena and the team she's put together. So I'll tell you guys about that in just a second. So definitely keep subscribe to our newsletter, check out our blogs, check out our website, events pages, follow us on Twitter, on LinkedIn. We try to make sure and keep you guys aware of things that are coming up.